Hi, I'm Canon Zachary Ullery, Director of Music at the American Cathedral in Paris, and it is now Advent season at the Cathedral. We celebrate the seasons of Advent and Christmas in many different ways, beginning with Advent lessons and carols on the first Sunday of Advent every year, followed by a Messiah sing-along, a Christmas pageant, and Christmas lessons and carols. About 2 years before the construction of the cathedral began, the first service of lessons and carols was held at Truro Cathedral in England. And that service was basically readings followed by carols or pieces sung by the choir. In 1918, at the end of the First World War, King's College, Cambridge modified the service slightly, and their tradition of lessons and carols has become sort of the model that everyone else bases their service of lessons and carols by. And this year happens to be the 100th anniversary of that celebration of lessons and carols as modified by King's College, Cambridge. The service of lessons and carols typically begins with the singing of Once in Royal David's City, the carol that's sort of lessons and carols is known by. The tradition at King's College, Cambridge is that it's always sung by a choir boy, and the boys do not know in advance who will sing the opening solo, so as to not make them nervous ahead of schedule. And we do the same thing here, although not always with a boy chorister or a girl chorister, but we start with a soprano solo, singing Once in Royal David's City. And that's followed by readings, 9 readings from Scripture, and each Scripture reading is followed by a carol sung by the congregation or an anthem of some sort sung by the Cathedral Choir that reflects on whatever reading has just been read. The selection of readings begins with Genesis, with the fall of man, so the Adam and Eve story. And we follow from Adam and Eve on through the prophets, the prophecies in Isaiah about the coming Messiah, on up to John the Baptist, and then eventually the birth of Christ, followed by the visits from the shepherds and the wise men. So 9 lessons in total, telling the sort of the whole story of the Christian faith in one service. At the Cathedral, we have 2 different lessons and carols services. The first is usually held on the first Sunday of Advent, and that's our Advent Lessons and Carols service. That service follows the same outline as Christmas lessons and carols would, except we stop before the birth of Christ. So we still talk about the Adam and Eve story. We still do the prophets. We do the Annunciation, where Mary is told that she will give birth to the Christ child, but we stop before Christ is actually born. And Advent Lessons and Carols at the Cathedral is now in its 8th year. We typically have done that in the morning service at the Cathedral, and for the first time this year, we'll hold Advent Lessons and Carols in the evening. So the service of Advent Lessons and Carols begins with something called the Matin Responsory, and that uses text from the Old Testament saying, "I look from afar, and lo, I see the power of God coming, and a cloud covering the whole earth. Go ye out to meet him and say, Tell us, art thou he that should come to reign over thy people Israel?"
Art thou he that should come to reign over thy people
Some of the texts used for the Christmas carols date back to medieval times or sometimes 13th and 14th century. The text for A Spotless Rose comes from the 14th century, and the imagery of a rose portraying Mary and Jesus is quite beautiful. A spotless rose is blowing, sprung from a tender root of ancient seers foreshowing, of Jesse promised fruit. Its fairest bud unfolds to light amid the cold, and in the dark midnight. The rose which I am singing, whereof Isaiah said, is from its sweet root springing in Mary, purest maid. For through our God's great love and might, the blessed babe she bare us in a cold, cold winter's night. Due to the popularity of our Christmas Lessons and Carols services, we actually hold two different services, one on Saturday and one on Sunday, to meet the demands of the audience members or the congregants who come to hear and participate in the service. The cathedral is one of the unique places in Paris that provides this gift to the city of Paris of lessons and carols.